I think it was muted. Okay, so this is going to be about an experience of having forged modules to an existing Puppet enterprise infrastructure that we built in the past year, and we just added our first forged module to it last month, and well, not last month, a couple of months ago, and I thought it would be interesting to share it with you guys. So my name is Pedro Pessoa, and I'm from Server Density. We do monitoring love, and we can monitor your servers and the services running out of those servers with love, so know it here. And since we do monitoring for lots of servers, we move a lot of data, and to move all this data fast, we need quite a significant infrastructure, and that's why we use Puppet to keep everything running smoothly, controlled, and knowing which changes go where and when. And these are the number of servers that we manage. So basically, our infrastructure runs on a Mongo database, so several instances, several clusters, several primary instances, several routing instances, and then we have the front-end Apache servers, which are in their turn behind some load balancers. The load balancers we were using, and we still are, is Pound, but we are preparing to release a second version of the product, and this version needs some extra features that Pound doesn't have, so we needed to use nginx in this new version. So when we decided with nginx, of course we had to deploy it using Puppet, we had to configure it using Puppet, but we wanted to keep the existing functionality that we have on our Puppet infrastructure. So we pull all our manifests from our GitHub repository at the Puppet master, and we use the Puppet console and live management. So live management is basically a front-end to collective, and this is on the Puppet enterprise, to allow operations people to do transient changes, like for example, add a new node to the load balancer, remove one node from the load balancer for maintenance. I'm focusing on the load balancer because this is what I'm going to be talking about. But these kind of changes that you can do on the Puppet console, the ops operation can do on the Puppet console. We have several types of these operations that you can do on different other servers besides the load balancer, but this example focuses on the load balancer. So we want to keep these two ways of working, so pulling the manifest from the GitHub and using the Puppet console to configure and operate the load balancer. So the first question that posed to us when we started to configure or to deploy nginx was if we were going to write our own nginx manifest like we did for all the rest of the infrastructure, Or if we were going to reach out to the community and see if someone else had already solved that problem before and not reinventing the wheel. We wanted a quick start for this, so we turned to the Puppet Forge. The Puppet Forge is a repository of modules contributed from several people. Puppet Labs also has their own modules contributed there, so it's a vast repository that you can search to whatever problem you are addressing. So when you search for nginx, you get these. So you have several modules that address the nginx problem. The first question is which one to choose. Well, since we are a Puppet Enterprise customer and we have our link to Puppet Labs, our choice was the Puppet Labs nginx module. Later on I will talk a little bit about if it was the right choice or not, but for us it was a natural choice and we started using it and wanted now to integrate it with our existing Puppet Enterprise infrastructure and with our own developed modules. So, two problems arose when we started to do that. So one was how to get the actual module code. So we have one option, which is going to the Puppet master and run that first command. So it's pretty simple if you want to start using modules right away. So Puppet module install, Puppet Labs, nginx, and that's it. You can start using it immediately. Or you pull it down from GitHub like that. So git's a module at the Puppet Labs nginx module. What's the difference between the two? One is that the first one is that you get a copy of the module, but it's managed through Puppet. You can list the modules that you've installed from the Forge. You can see their versions, you can upgrade them, and so on. The second one ties in more to your version control that you may be using. So we are using Git. So we go into the directory where we pulled in the module and we can see which version it is, but through Git. We chose the later one because of the way we have our infrastructure set up on the Puppet master. We wanted to keep the tie with GitHub and decided not to use the first approach. Then you have the second issue, how to run it on the existing modules. So there is no parameterized classes on the console. By the way, this module is based on the parameterized class. So you would have to do some tricks if we would go there. Or you can merge your site PP, which in our case is empty because we use the Puppet console. But since the Puppet console it's ENC, you could actually do this and merge both. But this would imply that our site PP would start to have no definitions, which in our case are managed through the Puppet console. And we didn't want to do that because, as I mentioned earlier, we want our operations people to go into the console and be able to manage the nodes from the console, not from the site PP in this case. So what we came up with was this. Basically wrap the nginx class inside our own class. Let's call it server density nginx. And in this server density nginx class, we have our own, the parameters of the modules come from this class and only the parameters of the module. So you keep the code, the original code of the module, in its own place, and you keep the parameters that you feed to that module in our own class, which is then configured through the Puppet console. And I will show you how this works right next. You can already see some of it here. If you see this variable, this target hosts socket, this is a list of hosts that are configured on the console that will create that nginx upstream rack. So we will retrieve a list of hosts from this variable and expand it here. So it gets a little better this way. So the first part is the screen capture of the console. So you see the lists definition there, and that part is what the operations people see through the Puppet Enterprise console web interface. You can see there the list definition, and then that list definition gets used on the server density nginx class, which in the backside is using the nginx module code as originally defined. So if we want to change, to make an on-the-fly update of the nginx, we just go to the Puppet console, edit that parameter, and then we edit the parameter for a particular node, or it could be a group of load balancers defined on the group. In this example, it's just one node, but it could be a group parameter. And you apply it, you save it through the Puppet console, and then you can use live management to push those changes. Now, one note here, nginx, it loads its configuration from files and does not have a control interface, for example, like pound has. So pound, the load balancer we were using before, has a control interface that you go into the command line and bring down nodes for maintenance, for example. In this case, nginx needs the configuration file to change, and you have to reload the file, which is exactly what Puppet does when you change and you push those changes. So Puppet will reload the nginx configuration from file, and since that reload does not kill the in-flight connections, it's exactly what we want. So we want the in-flight connections to be served and terminated normally. We don't want to be killed. So we can push these changes, for example, to bring down a node out of the load balancer. And when that node has finished serving all the in-flight connections, nginx will not send new connections to it. So we will push those changes using the live management here. So you can use the filter per node. In this case, we have 2 load balancers. We just push run once. It's a button there. So this is a bit similar to what we saw in the morning on the command line. So it's pretty much the same operation with filters. So, but this is done through the Puppet console web interface. Then we actually see the execution status of that trigger. So on each node, they were triggered to run. If one of the nodes was running already manifest, it would show here. So one node was idle, but the other wouldn't be, and we could see it. If we want, we can go using the Puppet console still to the log file of each node. In this case, it was load balancer 2 running the manifest, and we could see the exact change or some error if it would happen. And with this, we were sure at this time that that node executed the configuration change, and you could see that from the console. Okay, so this was pretty much what we did and how we operate using the console and this module pulled out of the Forge. What could we have done differently, or some alternatives to this implementation? So we learned later on that the Puppet Labs module is actually a fork from James' module. This was not visible on the Forge, so you have to go into GitHub. If you suspect that's a fork from another module, you have to go there and look for it. So we could ask if we shouldn't have used that one instead. Because the last update to the Puppet Labs module was around June, 30th June 2011, and James' module has some newer updates. I know that Puppet Labs wants to improve this situation regarding the Puppet Forge. They want to make their namespace in the Forge the best-in-class modules and be actively maintained. At least that's the information I got, and they should kick off this year. So I'm pretty sure that the modules from the Puppet Labs namespace will be more actively maintained, at least. In the end, we ended up forking Puppet Labs module again. And it was just a matter of changing where we would get the code from in the Puppet Master, and we did our own extensions there. A couple of them already existing in James' module, but this was after we learned about that original fork. And that's basically what I wanted to tell you guys. You can see this presentation and the other one from PuppetConf in September in this URL. Okay, questions?